Welcome to my expat stories. What's worse than grief? Grief with an audience. Alan knows. 63-year-old retired postman from Bristol. Wife died. House got quiet. The kind of quiet where you notice every tick of the clock, where the empty chair at dinner gets louder than conversation ever was. Kids visit. They're kind. But he sees the pity, that careful voice. How are you doing, Dad? Like he's made of glass. So Alan went to the Philippines. Iloilo City. Not for romance, just warmth. Company. Something that wasn't silence. He found it. But warmth has a price, and loneliness makes you willing to pay things you wouldn't normally pay. The question isn't whether Alan knew. The question is whether knowing mattered. If you've ever paid for company because the alternative was silence, hit that subscribe and like button. This one's quiet, but it cuts deep. Here's Alan. I still set 2 places at the table sometimes. Habit. 40 years of marriage. You don't just stop. Then I catch myself. Take 1 setting away. Eat alone. Again. I'm Alan. 63. Retired postman. Bristol. Worked the same routes for most of my adult life. Knew every street. Every house. Every dog that would bark when I came through. Retired a bit ago now. Pension's decent. Not brilliant, but decent. About 18,000 a year. Enough for one person living quietly. Margaret. That's my wife. Was my wife. She died. Cancer. Started in her breast. Spread. 14 months from diagnosis to the end. The house has been quiet since. Different kind of quiet. The kind where you hear yourself breathe and it feels too loud. We've got 2 kids. Sarah's 34, lives in London, marketing job, busy. Michael's 31, Cardiff, teacher, good lad. They both came round after Margaret passed, stayed a week each, made sure I was eating, made sure I knew how to work the washing machine. Like I hadn't been doing laundry for 40 years. But they meant well. They worry. They still call. Every Sunday, like clockwork. And I can hear it in their voices, that careful tone. How are you doing, Dad? Not just asking, checking, making sure I haven't fallen apart, making sure I'm coping. And I am coping. I just don't know what I'm coping for. The house feels massive now. 3-bedroom semi and fish ponds. Margaret and I bought it when Sarah was on the way. Raised both kids there. Every room has memories. The kitchen where Margaret would make Sunday roasts. The living room where we'd watch telly together. Her chair. I can't sit in it. Still can't. It's been there empty all this time and I can't bring myself to move it. A friend from work, bloke named Colin, he went to Thailand after his wife passed. Said it helped. Change of scenery. Somewhere warm. Somewhere that wasn't full of reminders. I thought about it. Not Thailand, but somewhere. Somewhere that wasn't Bristol in February, with the rain and the grey and the empty chair. I looked online. Philippines came up. Visa on arrival. English widely spoken. Warm. Cheap to live. I wasn't thinking long term. Just a break. A few weeks somewhere different. Booked a flight to Manila. Then another flight to Iloilo City. Never heard of it before. But it looked nice in the photos. Beaches. Old churches. Quieter than Manila. That appealed to me. I'm not a nightlife person. Never was. Margaret and I, we were stay-at-home types. Telly and a cup of tea. That was us. Landed in Iloilo on a Tuesday. The heat hit me the second I stepped off the plane. Wet heat. Heavy. Like walking into a warm bath. Completely different from Bristol. I liked it immediately. Felt alive in a way cold doesn't make you feel. I'd booked a small hotel near the city centre. Clean. Air conditioning worked. The staff were friendly. Helped me sort out a SIM card. Showed me where the nearest restaurants were. Everyone smiled. Genuinely smiled. Not the Bristol smile where you're just being polite. Actually pleased to see you. I spent the first few days just walking. The streets smelled like grilled meat and exhaust fumes. And something sweet I couldn't identify. Flowers maybe. Or fruit from the market stalls. There were jeepneys everywhere. Colourful, loud, playing music. People hanging off the back. It was chaos, but cheerful chaos. Not the orderly quiet of Bristol, where everyone keeps their head down. The food was different. I tried things I'd never heard of. Adobo. Chicken cooked in vinegar and soy sauce. Tangy. Rich. Served with rice. Always rice. Mountains of it. Sinigang, sour soup with vegetables and pork. The sourness hit you first, then the warmth. I ate alone in little restaurants where I was the only foreigner. No one stared. They just served the food and left me to it. I appreciated that, not being made a fuss of. I met Elena at church, Jaro Cathedral, big old Spanish colonial building. I'm not particularly religious. Margaret was. She went every Sunday. I'd go with her, mostly to keep her company. But being there felt familiar, comforting. So I went to Mass one Sunday in Iloilo, sat in the back, listened to the service in a mix of English and Visayan. Didn't understand all of it, but the rhythm was the same. Stand, sit, kneel, pray. Same as home. After the service, I was standing outside, just looking at the building, the architecture. Beautiful old stone. And a woman approached me. Older, not young, maybe mid-40s. Wearing a simple dress, she smiled. Asked if I was visiting. I said yes, from England, Bristol. She said welcome. Her name was Elena. She asked if I was here on holiday. I said I suppose so. Wasn't really sure what to call it. She laughed. Soft laugh. Said sometimes we don't need to call it anything. Sometimes we just need to be somewhere else for a while. I liked that. The way she said it. No prying. No questions about why I was alone. Just acceptance. She asked if I'd had lunch. I said no. She said there was a good place nearby. Would I like company? And I thought about eating alone again in another restaurant. And I said yes. That would be nice. We had lunch at a little place near the church. Halo for dessert. Shaved ice with beans and fruit and milk and ice cream all mixed together. Sounds strange. Tasted wonderful. Sweet and cold and refreshing in the heat. Elena talked easily. About Iloilo, about the church, about her family. She had 2 grown children. A son who drove a tricycle. A daughter who worked at a shop. She lived with her mother. Had been married once. Husband passed away a while back. Heart attack. Sudden. I told her about Margaret. Don't know why. Usually I don't mention it. But something about Elena felt safe. Like she understood. She nodded. Said losing someone like that changes the shape of your days. That's how she put it. Changes the shape of your days. Exactly that. That's exactly what it does. We talked for 2 hours. She asked about Bristol. About being a postman. About my route, my regulars. I told her about Mrs. Patterson, who'd always have a biscuit for me at Christmas. About Mr. Chen, who collected stamps, and we'd talk about them sometimes. Small things. But they felt important when I was saying them out loud. When we left, Elena said if I wanted company again, she'd be at the same church next Sunday. Same seat, 3rd row from the back on the left. I said I'd be there. And I was. And the Sunday after that. And the one after that. It wasn't romance, I want to be clear about that. I wasn't looking for romance. Elena wasn't offering it. We were 2 people who'd both lost spouses, who both understood what it meant to eat dinner alone, to wake up and have nobody to talk to about the strange dream you had. We were companions, that's the word. Companions. She started inviting me to her house. Small place in a barangay outside the city centre. Concrete. 1 level. Tidy. She'd cook. Filipino food. I'd bring wine sometimes. We'd eat together. Watch television. Filipino shows I didn't understand, but she'd translate the funny bits. I'd laugh because she was laughing. It felt normal. Like something I used to have. Her mother lived with her. Older woman. Tiny. Didn't speak English. But she'd smile at me. Pat my hand. Elena said her mother liked me. Said I had a kind face. I met her son, Roderick. Quiet bloke, about 30. Polite, worked long hours driving his tricycle. Picking up passengers. Elena worried about him. Said the tricycle was getting old, needed repairs. I asked how much. She said she didn't know. Wasn't my problem anyway. But I thought about it. Roderick seemed like a good lad, hard worker. If his tricycle broke down, he couldn't work, couldn't support himself. It seemed, I don't know, like something I could help with. I gave Elena £800, told her to get the tricycle fixed, or get him a better one if needed. She tried to refuse. I said it was nothing. I had the money. It was sitting in my account doing nothing. Might as well do something useful with it. She cried, held my hands, said I was too kind, too generous. Her son would be so grateful. And I felt it, that warm feeling, being useful, being needed, being something other than the widower in Bristol, whose kids called out of obligation. Margaret would have liked Elena, that's what I thought. Margaret always helped people, always found someone who needed something. This felt like something she would have approved of. I didn't realise it then, but the £800 was the first payment. The first small amount in a long line of small amounts that would add up to something I couldn't afford. But at the time, all I felt was useful, and that felt like enough. After the tricycle, things changed. Not dramatically, gradually, like how winter becomes spring in Bristol. You don't notice it day to day, but one morning you wake up and realise everything's different. Elena started mentioning things, never asking, just mentioning. Her daughter Maricel needed books for her course. Studying to be a nurse, the books were expensive here. Elena showed me the list. I looked up the prices online, sent her £600. She cried again, said her daughter would be so grateful. Would call me Tito Allen. Uncle Allen. That felt nice. Having someone call you uncle. Being part of a family again. Her mother, Lola Rosa, the tiny woman who patted my hand. She had diabetes, needed medication every month. The public hospital had it, but the queues were terrible. 4 hours sometimes just to see a doctor. Elena mentioned it over dinner one night, said she wished she could afford the private clinic for her mum. Make it easier, more comfortable. I asked how much the private clinic was. She said she didn't know. Maybe £400 a month. Too much. They'd manage with the public hospital. I set up a standing order, £400 monthly, sent directly to Elena, for Lola Rosa's medication. Elena hugged me, said her mother would live longer because of my kindness, that I was a blessing. Margaret's pension had stopped when she died, obviously, but I'd kept the money in a separate account. Hadn't touched it. Felt wrong somehow, using money that was meant for her. But this, helping Lola Rosa, keeping an old woman comfortable in her last years. Margaret would have done the same. Margaret was always helping people. This felt right. Like honouring her memory. The community, sort of. Absorbed me. That's the word. Absorbed. Elena would introduce me to people. At church, in the barangay, the local store. This is Alan. From England. He's staying in Iloilo. Very kind man. Very generous. Everyone was friendly. Warm. They'd invite me to things. Birthday parties, family gatherings, baptisms. I'd sit there eating lechon and drinking San Miguel, and people would come over, chat, practice their English, ask about England, the weather, the Queen, football. They all wanted to talk about football, and slowly, person by person, conversation by conversation. Someone would mention a problem, not to me directly, just in conversation, like how you'd mention the weather. Elena's neighbour, her roof was leaking. Rainy season was coming. She was worried. Elena mentioned it while we were having coffee, said it was sad. The woman was elderly, living alone, couldn't afford the repairs. I asked how much. Elena said maybe £300. I transferred it that evening. Elena said the neighbour cried when she told her, said there were still good people in the world. The barangay basketball court needed resurfacing. The concrete was cracked. Dangerous for the kids. Elena's son played there. The barangay captain was trying to raise funds. Community project. Elena mentioned they were short. Asked if I might contribute. Even a little would help. I gave £1,000. The barangay captain came to Elena's house to thank me personally. Shook my hand. Said I was an honorary Filipino now. Everyone in the neighbourhood knew my name after that. The church, Jarrow Cathedral, where I'd met Elena. They were raising funds for a new building. Youth centre. For the children. Somewhere safe to study. To play. The priest mentioned it during Mass. Elena turned to me afterwards. Said, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could build it? Give the children somewhere to go. I asked about the target. She said they needed to raise £20,000. I gave £5,000. The priest announced it the following Sunday. Didn't name me, but everyone knew. Shook my hand after Mass. Said God would bless my generosity. I wasn't trying to buy anything. Wasn't trying to impress anyone. It felt good. Being useful. Being needed. Being the person people smiled at when they saw you coming. Not the person they pitied. Bristol felt further away with each passing month. The kids still called every Sunday. But the conversations got shorter. They'd ask how I was. I'd say fine. They'd tell me about their lives, their jobs. Sarah was seeing someone new. Michael got a promotion. I was happy for them. genuinely happy. But it felt distant, like watching something through glass. I mentioned I might stay in Iloilo a bit longer. They seemed relieved. Sarah said, "That's great, Dad. You sound happier." Michael said the sunshine must be doing you good. They didn't ask about money, didn't ask what I was doing with my time. They had their own lives. I understood that. Margaret had always said, raise them to leave, not to stay. In Iloilo I had a routine. Morning coffee with Elena. She'd make it the way Margaret used to. Milky, 2 sugars. We'd sit on her porch, watch the neighbourhood wake up. The tricycles starting their routes. Kids walking to school. Dogs wandering past. The smell of cooking rice coming from every house. Garlic, onions, fish sauce. The morning smells of a Filipino neighbourhood. Lunch at the market sometimes. I'd go with Elena. She'd pick out vegetables I'd never seen before. Ampalaya, bitter melon, sitaw, long beans. She'd cook them at her place. I'd help. Well, I'd try to help. Mostly I'd just watch. She moved around the kitchen like Margaret used to. Efficient, knowing exactly where everything was. The sizzle of garlic in oil. The sharp smell of vinegar hitting hot pan. The way the whole house would smell like whatever she was cooking. Church on Sundays. Same seat, 3rd row from the back on the left. The priest knew me now. Would nod when I came in. The choir would sing in Visayan and I'd follow along phonetically. Didn't know what I was singing, but the melody was nice. The church smelled like incense and old wood and candle wax. Familiar smells. Comforting. Evenings at Elena's. Watching Filipino game shows. Eating dinner. Her mother would sit with us. Smile. Pat my hand. Sometimes we just sit. Not talking. Not doing anything. Just company. The sound of the television. The fan overhead. The neighbourhood noises drifting in through the windows. Children playing. Someone's karaoke machine. Dogs barking. Life happening around me instead of to me. It wasn't love. Not romantic love. But it was something. Something that felt like belonging. Month 8. Elena's daughter Maricel needed help. The nursing course required clinical placement, but the hospital charged a fee, £2,000. Maricel was worried she wouldn't be able to finish. Elena mentioned it over dinner, said Maricel was crying every night. Worked so hard, was so close to finishing. If she couldn't afford the placement, she'd have to drop out, start over. All that time wasted. I transferred the money the next day. Maricel came to the house, hugged me, called me Tito Allen, said she'd make me proud. When she was a nurse, she'd take care of me if I ever got sick. I laughed, said hopefully I wouldn't need it, but I appreciated the thought. The church youth centre. They'd broken ground, but they needed more funds. The materials were more expensive than expected. The priest asked if I might consider another contribution, just to keep the project going. I gave another £3,000. The priest blessed me in front of the whole congregation, said I was an example of Christian charity. Elena's cousin, her house flooded during a typhoon, lost everything, needed money to repair, rebuild. Elena asked if I could help, even a little. I gave £1,500. The cousin came by, brought a roasted chicken as thanks, said she'd pray for me every day. The barangay health centre needed supplies, medical equipment. Elena's son was friends with someone who worked there. Mentioned they were short. I gave £800. A child in the neighbourhood got sick. Family couldn't afford the hospital. Elena mentioned it. I covered it. £1,200. Someone's motorbike broke down. Needed it for work. £500. Someone's grandmother needed glasses. £300. On and on. Every week something. Someone. A need, a problem. A gap I could fill. And I filled them. Every single one. Because saying no meant, what? Being selfish? Being the rich foreigner who could help but wouldn't? Going back to being alone? To Bristol? To the empty chair? At least here I was useful. At least here people needed me. Even if what they needed was money. Even if that's all they needed. It was still need. Still purpose. Still reason to get up in the morning. Month 10 I added it up. First time I'd actually looked at the total. I kept meaning to. Just to know. To have a record. But I'd been avoiding it. Scared of what I'd find. I went through my bank statements, printed them out, sat at Elena's kitchen table while she was out at the market. Started adding. Line by line, transfer by transfer. £43,000. In 10 months. £43,000. The pension was £18,000 a year. I had savings, About 90,000 total. Money. Margaret and I had put aside over 40 years of careful living. For retirement, for emergencies, for the kids if they ever needed it. Half of it. Gone. In 10 months. I sat there looking at the numbers, the kitchen fan ticking overhead, the smell of lunch still in the air, garlic, vinegar, and I thought about what I'd gotten for £43,000. Not romance, not sex, not a relationship in the traditional sense. Company, warmth, people who smiled when they saw me, a place at the table, a reason to wake up that wasn't just another day of emptiness. £43,000 for not being alone. I heard Elena coming back, the sound of her plastic bags rustling, her footsteps on the concrete path. I folded up the bank statements, put them in my pocket. When she came in, I smiled, asked what was for lunch. She showed me the vegetables, started talking about who she'd seen at the market, whose daughter was getting married, whose son got a new job, the rhythm of the neighbourhood, the rhythm of life. And I thought, Bristol has none of this. Bristol has an empty house and kids who call out of obligation, and Colin from work who checks on me because he feels sorry for me. £43,000. And I'd spend £43,000 more if it meant not going back to that. Even though I knew, I wasn't stupid, I knew what this was. What I was the ATM foreigner, the generous Tito Allen, the man who fixed problems with money. But at least I was something. At least I mattered to someone, even if that mattering cost everything I had. And that would have to be enough, because the alternative wasn't an alternative at all. It was just silence. And I'd had enough silence to last a lifetime. The first crack came on a Tuesday. I was at Elena's house. She'd gone to the store for something. I was sitting on the porch, just sitting, watching the street. Her daughter, Maricel, was inside with some friends. Young women, nurses from the hospital, where she'd done her placement. The placement I'd paid for. They were speaking of Visayan, laughing. I wasn't paying attention. Then I heard my name, Tito Allen, and something else. A phrase. Repeated a few times. Different voices, more laughing. I asked Lola Rosa, she was sitting next to me. Didn't speak English, but sometimes she understood basic questions. I pointed toward the house, asked what they were saying. She smiled, patted my hand, said nothing. Later I asked someone at the market. Older bloke who spoke decent English. Ran a vegetable stall. I gave him the phrase I'd heard, asked what it meant. He looked uncomfortable. Said it was nothing. Slang. Hard to translate. I pressed. He finally said it meant something like ATM foreigner. Or walking ATM. Foreigner who pays for things. He said it quickly. Apologetically. Said some young people were rude. Didn't mean anything by it. I thanked him. Bought vegetables I didn't need. Walked back to the hotel I'd kept as a backup. My original hotel. Still had the room. Paid monthly. Somewhere to be alone when I needed it. I sat on the bed, listened to the air conditioning. Thought about that phrase. Walking ATM. ATM foreigner. That's what I was. That's what they called me. Not Tito Allen. Not the generous man. The walking ATM. I should have been angry, should have felt betrayed, but I just felt tired and sad and completely unsurprised. The second crack came a week later. The church. The youth centre they'd been building. I'd given £8,000 total. The priest had made a big show of it. Announced my generosity. Said the building would have a plaque with donors' names. I went to see the site. Where they were building it. Wanted to see the progress. Feel like the money went to something real. The site was empty. Not under construction. Just empty. A concrete foundation. Some bricks. But nothing recent. The bricks had moss growing on them. The concrete was cracked. This wasn't active construction paused for the day. This was abandoned. Months ago at least. I asked around the neighbourhood, when would they finish the youth centre? People looked confused. What youth centre? Oh, that. They started it a while back. Ran out of money. Project stopped. But I'd given money. Recently. 3 months ago. Another £3,000. The person I asked shrugged. Said maybe the money went to something else. Church always needed money for something. The third crack came 2 weeks after that. I was walking through the neighbourhood. Saw Roderick. Elena's son. The one whose tricycle I'd helped fix. Or replace. £800 I'd given. For a used tricycle that would last him a few years. Keep him working. He was driving a new one. Not new to him. Actually new. Shiny. Modern. The kind with the covered passenger area. Probably cost £3,000 if it cost anything. I stopped him, asked about the tricycle. Said it looked nice. He smiled. Big smile. Said yeah. He'd saved up. Bought it a few months ago. Working hard. Finally could afford a decent one. Saved up. A few months ago. Right around the time I'd given Elena the money for his tricycle. I smiled. Said good for you. Walked away. That night I went through everything again. Every transfer. Every amount. Cross-referenced with what I'd been told the money was for. What I'd actually seen. Maricel's books for nursing. £600. But when I looked closer at the dates, she'd already finished her course when I sent the money. Elena had showed me her graduation photo. The date on the photo was before the money transfer. The hospital placement. £2,000. But Maricel had already done her placement. Was already working as a nurse. The money came after. Lola Rose's medication. £400 monthly. I'd been sending it for 8 months. £3,200. But when I checked the pharmacy receipts Elena had shown me once, they were for £200 a month. Half what I'd been sending. The house that flooded. The cousin. £1,500. I'd asked around. No major floods recently. Small flooding during one typhoon, but nothing that required rebuilding. On and on. Every amount. Every story. Not all lies. Some things were real. Some people genuinely needed help. But the amounts were inflated. Or the timing was wrong. Or the need wasn't quite what Elena had described. £68,000. That's what I'd sent over 14 months. I added it up 3 times to be sure. £68,000. And I sat in that hotel room, in the dark, with the air conditioning humming, and I thought about confronting Elena, about demanding answers, about getting angry, but I couldn't find the anger. I just felt hollow. I went to Elena's house the next morning, asked if we could talk alone. She made tea. We sat on the porch, the neighbourhood doing its morning routine around us, kids to school, tricycles starting routes, dogs wandering, same as every morning. I told her I knew, showed her the bank statements, the cross-referencing I'd done, the discrepancies, the timeline issues, the amounts that didn't match. She listened, didn't interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she put her cup down, looked at me, not defensive, not guilty, just calm. "Alan," she said, "did anyone force you to give money?" I said no. "Did I ever ask you directly for anything?" I thought about it, really thought about it, and she hadn't. She'd mentioned things, created situations, but never asked directly. I said no. "The people you helped, did they need help?" I said yes, some of them. Some of it was real. She nodded. "I have a family, Alan. A community. People who need things. And I have access to someone who has money. I connected those things. That's all. Did you get nothing from it?" I asked what she meant. "You got to be part of something. You got to be useful. You got to be needed. You got to not be alone in Bristol. Was that worth nothing?" And there it was. The truth. Naked and simple. I'd paid £68,000 to not be alone. To have company. To have warmth. To have a reason to get up. And she'd facilitated that. Created the structure. Connected my need with everyone else's needs. Was she wrong? Was I wrong? Or were we just two people making a transaction? Neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I asked if any of it was real. The companionship. The friendship. The feeling of belonging. She thought about it. Then said, "I do care about you. You're kind, easy to be with. My family likes you. The community respects you. But would I spend time with you if you didn't help? Probably not. Would you spend time with me if I couldn't give you this life? Probably not. We both got something we needed." I sat with that for a while. The morning getting warmer. The sounds of the neighbourhood. The smell of cooking starting up from the houses around us. Life happening. I asked what happens now. She said that was up to me. I could leave. Go back to Bristol. Get angry. Try to get the money back, though we both knew that wouldn't work. Or I could stay. Accept what this was. Keep being part of things. Keep being Tito Allen. The choice was mine. I didn't leave. I'm still in Iloilo. Still have the hotel room, but I spend most of my time at Elena's. Still go to church on Sundays. Still eat meals with the family. Still help when people need it. Though less now. I set a limit. £500 a month. For genuine emergencies only. Elena agreed. The kids know I'm staying. They seem fine with it. Sarah said she might visit sometime. Probably won't. Michael said the climate must agree with me. It does. Bristol is cold. Even in summer. Cold in a way that's not just temperature. I think about Margaret sometimes. Wonder what she'd make of all this. She was smarter than me. She would have seen it coming. But she also would have understood. She knew what loneliness looked like. She'd have known why I stayed. The money's almost gone. Maybe another year. Maybe less. What happens then, I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to Bristol. Back to the empty chair and the kids who call from obligation, and the quiet that's louder than noise. Or maybe Elena will keep me around anyway. Company costs nothing, just money costs money. And when the money's gone, maybe the company's enough. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. What I do know is this. I'm £68,000 poorer, and I have a place to sit in the mornings. And people who know my name, and food that tastes better than anything I could make alone. And noise instead of silence. Was it worth it? Ask me when I'm back in Bristol. If I go back, ask me when I'm sitting in Margaret's chair, because I've finally run out of reasons not to. Ask me when it's just me and the clock and the quiet. Right now, sitting here with the neighbourhood alive around me and Elena making lunch and the smell of garlic and fish sauce drifting out from the kitchen, I can't say it wasn't worth it, even if it cost everything, even if it wasn't real, even if I knew the whole time. At least I wasn't alone, and maybe that's all that matters, maybe that's all it ever was. Company, for a price. And loneliness is expensive too, just in different ways. This is my expat stories. Sometimes you know exactly what you're paying for. Sometimes you pay it anyway. Because the alternative isn't having your money and your dignity. The alternative is having your money and nothing else. And nothing costs more than you'd think.